comfortably, then we'll begin. Hello, hello, and welcome. We have a great show planned for you tonight. I started a little bit early, sorry. But I'm really excited about tonight's show. I think it's going to be a very good one. We're going to be covering cancel culture tonight, and I think we're all going to have some great, unique takes on it and our thoughts on it from our perspectives. Hopefully, we'll be able to have more perspectives from the chat too, so that'll be great. I'm really excited. We have a great show planned for you, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got, of course, we have Dick Dawson with us, who is our producer. We have DKG Custom, of course, my partner in crime, Claire Bear. And we have two guests tonight. Our first one is Planner Walk. Hello, Planner Walk. How are you?
Ahoy hoy, I'm doing well. You?
Doing great, thank you. I'm excited about tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun. And our second one is Christopher Mott. How are you? Good to see you.
All is well in the world. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. The faux pas of all panel discussions, Zoom meetings, and the like. Things are going quite well over here. I hope to have a robust discussion about cancel culture and, buckle up, people. Buckle up, because I'm about to blow your brain balls.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Here we go.
Okay.
So I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We have, like I said, we have this great panel here with us tonight. And, and how's everybody else doing?
Well, are you ready for tonight, Aimee? I am. It's interesting. This subject brings everybody from everywhere. Everyone has not only a personal story, but has watched a takedown or has opinion about how something was done against another account, another social media platform, even just like out there, like what we would call like real world stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. And I think for once, I actually won't have to speak a lot tonight. I'm going to leave it to Mate.
Hooray!
Wait a minute. You're English, right? I know Dave paid you. You better stop, like right now.
I'll shut up and make kicking noises.
Exactly.
Anyway. Okay. So where do we want to start, Aimee? What do we want to do?
Sure. Should we start right out with that first article?
Wait a minute. I see Christopher's hand. He's like, wait,
he's already here. Go right ahead. Yes, please.
All right. So I'm gonna try to be calm. Try not to let too much information out too quick. Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Can we get an operational definition for what cancel culture is going to mean for this conversation? It doesn't have to be the definitive definition. I'm redundant, but something that we can agree on. Like
I got
what
it.
is it that we're sinking our teeth into?
I got it.
Yeah.
Go.
Wait.
Can you spell that?
I got words that go with that if you'd like.
We always call those fluffs in our house, so that however you like to spell fluff.
PRPRPRPRPRPR.
Exclamation point or ellipse?
Exclamation point after because it's loud.
Oh, but seriously, I could actually give you one if you actually wanted the phenomenon. Yeah, the phenomenon.
Even if we don't completely stick to it, just to kind of set the stage, this is what we're talking about.
Get a general. Yeah, exactly.
Generalization wise, the phenomenon in which those who deem to have been acted or spoke in an unacceptable manner are ostracized, boycotted, shunned, beat up upon, targeted. This shunning can extend to social or professional circles, all kinds of stuff, either in the media or in person. Mostly high profile, mostly celebrities and things like that, both even on personal levels. And that's subject to this ostracization has been said to be called cancel culture. How's that?
Okay. I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. It sounds good. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. I think that's the best the best definitive answer for that, because we've seen it on all levels. It's not just celebrities. It's regular everyday people, I guess you could call us. Us lowly peons down here. I don't know. What do you call us? But anyway, yes. And I've seen it happen on all levels.
But since you bring up that it happens on all levels, I'm just going to go ahead and start throwing curveballs. So what's the difference between cancel culture and scapegoating? And what's wrong with scapegoating?
What's wrong with scapegoating?
Yeah.
The definition of scapegoating is to just pin something on somebody untowardly, like they may not even be responsible for it, but just finding a target
seem to be
and making them responsible with whatever the hell is pissing you off.
That's a very utilitarian version of scapegoat.
Well, we're talking in generalizations here. So, like, it's like targeting somebody for whatever the heck you're pissed off at the moment. And I don't call it legitimate or a value, actually.
Because I guess I'm taking more of like I'm taking a more neutral and analytic approach, even though I agree from the outset that the words that we're using have these kinds of negative connotations, which makes these kinds of discussions somewhat difficult. But I think that we're going to rock this. So when I was thinking of scapegoating, I was thinking most specifically about like a society in which bad actors are eschewed. They are ostracized because they're made an example of, such that an example is made. And indirect learning can occur, like, hey, you don't have to suffer this consequence, but you see this person suffering this consequence for this behavior. All you need to do to not suffer this behavior is not perform suffer this consequence is not perform that behavior. Exactly. Now, I think that's rudimentary as fuck, and I think that there are more nuanced. I'm allowed to curse, right?
And that's in the pro column, right? That's in the pro column for cancel culture. It marginalizes people, keeps them accountable. It makes a justice system amongst us somewhat. Yeah.
Yes, but I also think that the way that the social media world exists, that we see it very differently, because the people that are being canceled just come back. Louis C.K. just sold out Madison Square Garden. Charles Murray is still a chair at a think tank. Like, who else is, like, Milo Yiannopoulos is the only example I can think of somebody who was like canceled and we just don't hear about. So
although he has tried to come back.
He has, yes. Just recently, actually, I
the
saw
whole
something.
Ye thing.
Yeah. Well, Leafy just came back to Twitter today, actually.
Who did?
Oh, really?
Leafy. If we're talking cancel culture, I don't know how many times he's been canceled, but he's back.
So that raises a bunch of questions for me, at least. So the first is there value in ostracizing people who are displaying bad behavior? Now, I'm going to define bad behavior in a very optimistic way, which is bad behavior would be behavior that causes suffering or the lack of flourishing for a society on the whole. Right? So I think it's a good thing for those people to be made examples of. Could it be overused for petty reasons? Yes. Could it be used incorrectly for utilitarian reasons? And you kind of gave that example where it's like, well, somebody needs to be blamed for this thing that happened. And even though that guy didn't do it, we'll blame him just for the greater good of the society. So could that happen? Of course. And these are all trade-offs. And I think that that's the core of the discussion for me, is what are the trade-offs? What do we do with people who want to say things that are inflammatory, could potentially cause harm or increase suffering for another group of people? What are the limits of free speech? So I guess we should kind of start talking about what a definition for free speech is, because the cancel culture and the free speech question are kind of two sides of the same coin almost. So how free are you if you can get canceled? I was about to say, how free are you if you can get cultured? That means something
Cancelled.
very different, people.
I know. Yeah, that's not it. That's a whole other show, Christopher. We can plan that one after if
Next
you like.
week, we're talking about.
Yes. Okay.
This could be a series.
Yeah.
We can talk
So
about the
I feel like I've talked too much, but I think that I've kind of thrown out enough out there.
I hear
exactly.
you because
I do hear you, and I have some perspectives on that too.
Yeah.
And
I'll be listening now.
Okay, not a problem. But I think I'm this from the wrong way, but we do have interesting perspectives tonight. And like I was talking earlier, mine comes from a more behavioral standpoint. I do, before I let everybody else finish, sorry about that, everyone. I do have a quick couple of questions here. One is from Krista Music Channel, who says, ask the Shills, please ask Planner Walk to tell us what an egg is.
This is an egg. Not this.
Not this.
Well, not anymore anyway.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. And then the second one, we have a good one from Shayna Caldwell, who was also a new member. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. When did cancel culture start? Did it start with Andrew Dice Clay, Paul Rubens, or maybe before then?
It started with Jesus.
Yeah.
Good point.
There's lots of it in there. I kind of agree with them. It's age old. It's any group that goes against another group. If you look at the way cancel culture is actually being weaponized now, just here in the United States, weaponizing politics, using cancel culture to do it. It's age old. Like it's as long as men exist with opinions in a mouth, cancel culture was there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think we've got enough opinions though, so we can stop with the new opinions.
Yeah, you think? You think? What can you imagine a world like that, Planner Walk? Like we all just stop, like we hold a referendum on, like, and just nobody give an opinion for 48 hours.
Oh,
I don't think I could.
Society would become a utopia in those 48 hours.
I don't think I could. I think there'd be secret opinion groups everywhere. Just like people meeting every 15 minutes on the hour just to like speak in small little huddles to say like a whole bunch of stuff and then run away. I don't think it's possible, to tell you the truth.
I honestly couldn't, because, someone would tweet a very cute cat with a cute little face, and I would have to say, "Oh my God, that's so cute," and that would be the end of me. That wouldn't take long. Maybe what?
The opinion police would be kicking down your door.
Well, here's the thing.
She said that cat was cute.
If you say that a cat is cute, that's not an opinion. That's just a fact.
Okay. Good.
Oh, see, saved. Okay, so now we have parameters. So as long as there's not like a whole worldwide blackout and there's no internet, it might be possible. It might be possible to do that. It might
be possible. Bury your head under a pillow for a little while. You might be okay.
Yeah, but you do get those furless cats, which actually divide the cat community. Yeah, because some people think they're cute and some people think they're horrible. So,
overgrown rats. Ugh.
That's not a cat. That's an abomination. Like, what are you talking about?
There you go. So Planner Walk is already wrong. That just because it's a cat, it is not therefore cute.
Yeah, you just
it's
mean
not
Planner Walk started a riot. Yes.
Yeah. So Planner Walk started with an opinion. So again, the watch your back. The police will be kicking down your door.
Uh-oh.
I mean, there is the thing of some cats aren't cute. Like I've seen a cat called Pigeon who's not cute.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Because it's a furless cat. But that's not my opinion. That's just a fact. It's just unfortunate that Aimee is a fascist.
Mm-hmm. What is the thing that like all babies are cute too? No, it's a fact that not all babies are cute. I'm sorry. That's the fact.
They have a chance once they've been wiped off, but
oh, stop. No, I mean seriously, Christopher brings up a very good point. I mean, there is valid use of And there's actually a lot of pros to cancel culture that people just don't really want to recognize because of how I believe because of how cancel culture get used in order, especially on the internet, the way it's done with bullying and ridicule and just like not forcing somebody off the internet, like based on their opinion, like being wrong, just forcing them off because like they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to argue it reasonably. They don't want to understand where they're coming from. They don't want to have the conversation to try to get both sides of it going, which Aimee and you and I both feel this way, I believe, about you got to understand the other party, regardless of how horrible it is what you're hearing. You really need to try to understand where they're coming from. Just even if it solidifies where you are and what you're believing and where your information is coming from. Otherwise, it's not a real discussion. Otherwise, you really don't have true opinion in the matter or true way in, right?
Well, exactly. And it does. And what it does is it does make you more rigid. So one of the things about growing and learning as people, you can change your opinion and be perfectly okay with that. You can learn new information. If you're not willing to have the conversation, you're not going to learn anything. It's communication is huge. It's a big part of how we learn. And so, yes, I have a screaming child in the background. Sorry about that. But before I continue, I do need to get to P. Barnes' message. P. Barnes, member for 20 months, says furless cats should be canceled.
There we go. Bring it full circle.
Exactly. Full circle. But yeah.
So it sounds like you're talking about like free speech absolutism, which is the idea that like all ideas, no matter how heinous, should be discussed openly. So am I overstating what I just heard?
No, as long as you add the caveat, not without consequence. Like they have to be willing to actually have that conversation. See, it's not just stand up there and say all of this horrible stuff and then walk away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe in that. Yeah.
Well, some people believe that there are ideas that I don't know if I don't want to put words in their mouths, but like to just to put it away, it's dangerous to talk about certain ideas in public, even if it's for the purpose of disassembling them, because having them in public promotes them to people who might be swayed by that argument, right? So it's almost like it's a recruiting tactic, some would say, to even allow that.
I've had that conversation on free speech, and I was speaking with someone.
Where do you fall on it?
Well, I fall on the point that we all have a boundary somewhere, and so does the greater good. And I know everybody gets annoyed when I say greater good, but I'm talking about the majority of the way people think on what might be dangerous, as Christopher said. And when we came to this conversation, they were absolutely that all free speech was valid. They had no boundary. They're like it all should be allowed out there. And then unfortunately, this was a father, and I brought up maps. And I said, you actually want people out there talking about that and making that acceptable? And he was like, hell no. And I'm like, flipped. Everyone has a boundary, and that's my only point. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be talking. I'm talking that everybody here on this panel has a boundary, and so does the greater good.
Absolutely.
It is when you make those things acceptable slightly, these microaggressions that get acceptable lead credence to making it more and more talked about, more and more acceptable to be it, more and more acceptable to do it, put it out
Changing
there.
the Overton window.
Right. Exactly.
Then to counter that, I'd say that, okay, to use the example of maps in particular, we can all agree that maps are not good. But what is worse is a map who actually...
And I think he just froze, but I think he was going to say an active map, like someone going towards the activity. Yeah.
So the reason why I bring that up is because there is a conversation to be had about not necessarily acceptance of maps, but less stigma around it so that people feel more comfortable to come out and get the help that they need so that they don't end up offending. Now, that is something that if you completely shut down all discussion of that, you can't then have that conversation. And that conversation, it may be damaging. It may be that because humans tend to be very all or nothing creatures, it may mean that if we have more acceptance of maps, then they feel more inclined to be able to come out, say that they're a map, and then not get the help that they need. But on the other hand, it could be that having that conversation allows people to go, I feel comfortable to come out and get the help, right?
Right.
I think that's I think that's a big thing, that a lot of people, they feel uncomfortable about certain subjects, really uncomfortable about certain subjects, but those subjects may have a more nuanced answer than just going, this makes me feel icky, so I'm not going to touch it.
You know what? I can get 100% behind that, as long as those conversations are being held in a context where somebody who has that issue is actually looking for the help to deal with it, and not being encouraged that it is just okay to be out here promoting that. So, that's and that may be an unpopular position, but that's where I'm at, and I'm going to be honest about it. Like that, it's okay to have these conversations as long as they're promoted in what deemed a healthy way. As you said yourself, most people are uncomfortable with that subject, and rightly so. It involves children, and so that person coming out, I don't want to shut them down or put a stigma on them, as long as they're coming at me with I consider in a more, if they're coming at me supporting that it's okay for them to be like that and they don't have some work to do, I'm going to shut it down and say, get off social media. I'm not giving you no money. I'd rather pay for your therapy, dude. Okay. I'd rather hear you talking to your therapist than us out here. Okay. Because, I want to hear that you don't want to do anything and you want to resolve this issue. And I don't think you need social media to support you doing it. That to me is attention that is allowing the situation to grow out of hand and influence maybe even younger minds or less minds are actually looking for support in the situation, which I'm going to stand on the hill that I don't want to promote. And, if we're talking getting help and therapy and dealing with it, I'm all for those conversations. But if we're talking, there's nothing really wrong with me and I should be out here able to talk about this to all of you, then I have an issue with it. A little bit.
But then on the other hand, not raising any kind of awareness could lead to it meaning that people that need help can't get the help that they need.
Right. Like I want somebody who's actually getting the help. I'm all for them out here talking about getting the help and getting other people to get help. That's what I'm saying. I want it led in that direction. But some of the conversations are not like that. Honestly, Planner Walk, and I'm sure you've seen them. Oh, they are not of that caliber. And those are the ones I'm talking about. I don't want, those are the ones I don't want to see. That's promoting it as being okay and safe for everyone. And I do consider risk group that need to be protected by all reasonable people at all times, period.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%.
Based.
Yeah. And I don't think I know where the line can be drawn there. Because obviously if there's a stigma around it, people feel less inclined to get help, even if they need help, right? But at the same time, you remove that stigma, then people feel more comfortable to go, well, it's okay. And I really, really hate that there are people out there that are trying to lump in maps with the queer community. No, they're not part of the queer community.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, that would be informative. That would be positive as far as explanation and getting more information out there on the subject.
Yeah, but that raises a different question for me. But it dovetails nicely with what you all are talking about. Should these discussions? Yeah, the focus of the camera is now on Hoku because he decided
it's beautiful.
part of this
by
conversation.
the way, Absolutely gorgeous.
Objectively cute cat. That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Because it has hair.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Exactly. So cute.
So I guess, should these discussions happen in the public forum, or are there more appropriate places for them? You know what I mean? So I'll use the example of like bioethical discussions. Those are super uncomfortable and sometimes controversial discussions to have. In a bioethics class, totally appropriate. You know, between bioethicists, totally appropriate, right? For the general public to be opining about, I mean, nothing against it, but some of the ideas that are out there, you know, like we're going to bring up topics like euthanasia. We're going to bring up topics about organ donation and, you know, things like that, that might be like super uncomfortable for people or unethical to others.
And totally unproductive in most cases because of the volume of the level of information that each individual may or may not have, where they're coming from. They don't tend on the public platforms that I see to be productive at all. They just turn into hurtful things for one side or the other, or a bunch of people in general.
But even the productive conversations, should they be happening in the public forum, or should they be kind of behind, behind some kind of firewall where it's like, hey, should you enter this arena, expect this, right? Or
to use something that's quite topical, trans women in women's sports is one that I think should be left to the experts. Now, I don't think that it's something where, you know, people shouldn't be allowed to have opinions on it, you know, because everybody is allowed to have opinions, but there is way too much discussion where people who are not experts, people who have Tucker Carlson levels of IQ, basically go onto their news network or even onto social media, talk about this kind of stuff, maybe even spread misinformation, and that we've seen that impact policy decisions. And I think that's when you get into some. Now, obviously, it doesn't affect a whole lot of people because there aren't.
That was what I was going to say. There's more talk about trans athletes than I think there are percentage of them in the athletic world.
But it is actually a way to use the topic to fearmonger for a larger platform, which I have noticed.
Oh yeah, well that's a GOP strategy. When they don't have policy, they do culture wars.
And you're right. There's not a lot of really good information out there, and that is a subject which takes a lot of accurate expert information to actually weigh in and should be done. And part of the problem, as you said, it does lead to policy. It does lead to policy because certain athletes were allowed in before they even had time to develop policies with the experts that could have handled a lot of the questions that are out here. Pressure from outside political discussion, social media discussion on the issue forced action before they were ready, before the actual intelligent, detailed conversation with the experts happened. At least that's my perception of it. And that's why we're where we are now, where we have athletes that are participating and then some that aren't. And it's just it's messed up because they got pushed into it based on exactly what you just said, Planor. The pressure of those conversations forces policy well before information is settled.
And I want to add that when it comes to, you know, we're talking about cancel culture. Cancel culture isn't I don't think that cancel culture is really a free speech issue, because when it comes to canceling someone, they still have the opportunity to talk. It's just that their audience may be diminished or whatever. You know, I think a lot of it also is disagreement. So if we try to cancel Tucker Carlson, he's still going to have a platform. Canceling him doesn't do anything to limit his reach, because he is effectively uncancelable.
someone once told me that we can only cancel ourselves in reality. Basically,
Yeah.
if we only go along with it,
sense.
like their opinion matters more than what I'm doing out here and what I'm saying, then of course, then if I'm going to put weight on what they're doing and I'm going to back off and leave, I'm canceling myself. It's really not them. I just give in. But yeah, someone had said that, and that's kind of what you say. Like Tucker Carlson, he's never going to say you're all right. I'm wrong. I'm down. You made your point.
No.
I'm out of here. I'm canceled. I'm leaving. He's never going to do that. I mean, look at Alex Jones. Everybody came up against him. The court came against him, and he went right out there and said, "I don't care what all you say. I don't care what the court said. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm here. Stay
well,
here."
that comes, and that comes into that whole behavioral thing that I was talking about earlier, and it happens not only with neurodivergent children, it happens with neurotypical children as well, and adults. If you push hard on somebody, if you push hard enough on somebody, they will double down. We see it all the time in M's Discord. We see it all the time on Twitter. I mean, it happens. That's one of the
there's research
negative
that
aspects
supports
of it
that
too. Yes, exactly. There is. So you have to approach it in a different way sometimes, and canceling just makes them, well, you see it every day. Well, they're canceling this person because they're telling the truth. Doesn't matter what you've said. It doesn't matter that you've had evidence to back yourself up. They're going to double down. They're going to say, well, look, because this was the truth, and that they just spin it around in a different way. So that to me shows where cancel culture isn't really as effective as people would like to think.
But can I offer?
Mm-hmm.
Can I offer that cancel culture has less to do with actually canceling the person than it is and this applies specifically to like events that people get canceled from, like speaking events that, we can talk about Charles Murray at, what is it, Midbury or Danbury or whatever college, but like people who are actually canceled from events that they were scheduled to go to. I think it has more to do with a virtue signaling of the place that cancels them, right? It's kind of a way of saying, hey, talk that shit somewhere else, just not here, right? And it's like in the same way, I'll put it this way. It has been described that when men catcall women around other men, they are not trying to actually flirt with and take home that woman, in as much as that's not the goal. Because people are like, how many times does that fucking work to turn that frown upside down? How many women have you actually attracted whistling at them? They're not doing it for the woman who's walking by. They're doing it to communicate to the people around them that they're the kind of guy who's virile enough to flirt with women who walk by. Using that analogy and laying it over this cancel culture thing, it is not for the purpose of canceling that you do this behavior. It is for the purpose of signaling to others your virtue and not allowing that in this space.
Well,
yeah, I think
so my whole issue.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm assuming you can hear me. I've had some audio issues.
Yeah.
The whole bone I have to pick with cancel culture is because its origins are loose and pretty much purely colloquial. It's way too easy to adapt to whatever you need. So on one end, it could be something that legitimately you really could firmly define it as something immoral, like trial by media, where somebody gets exposed for something. It may be minor, it may be major, but their life gets wrecked before they even hit a courtroom if it's a legal issue. And on the other end of it, they like to wedge things into it that are legitimate means of addressing issues. So like the big one, boycotts. A company has a sponsor, takes an action that's unpopular, so they take and people will boycott them, and you will have news programs, I put that news in heavy quotations, coming out and saying, this is cancel culture, this is evil. And the reality is they advocate for capitalism. Boycotts are and they say that, the marketplace will solve these issues. And that's exactly what you're doing, is using the marketplace to solve the issue. But because they don't want to call a boycott, because they need to make it something that's evil, they use cancel culture as a title for it to kind of obscure what they're actually doing. It's just way too loose a term.
It's way broader.
I want to make a point here because I sort of have just realized something when it comes to cancel culture. You can get cancelled once and things will be fine. So you see this happening a lot with people that are right-wing media figures. They get cancelled by the left. And so they say to the right-wing sphere, look, I got cancelled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then if they do something that pisses off the right-wing sphere, they're out on the street, right? But I think that, where was I going with this? Yeah, I think that you can only really cancel people within your own group. Like, if the left tries to cancel someone that's claiming that they're being cancelled before, they're not going to do it. Like, if you let's take Gina Carano, who, was apparently cancelled by the... Yeah. She cannot be cancelled again by the left because if she does, it's going to have zero impact. And I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. A lot of it is people that go, well, I've been cancelled by this group, so I'm going to turn to the group that hasn't cancelled me and appeal to them. And I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. Like, if you have an opinion that's just wildly unpopular on both sides, yeah, you'll get cancelled, but no one's going to call it cancelling because, it's just something that people agree is bad.
Right. Well, basically what you've all just proved in your conversations is the cancel culture itself has so many degrees and so many avenues of it. It's such a broad subject that if we look at it Christopher's way and we're looking at it psychologically, like what is it good for? It's actually a societal statement in general, and that there is positives to it in how we're using it to try to control narratives we find dangerous. Am I correct, Christopher? Like, I'm kind of getting that vibe there. And then Aaron comes in and he's saying, listen, it's all in how you use it and what they're doing with it, because there's cancel culture because this guy said this back in 1997 and I'm still pissed off about it because of something he just said now. So I'm going to use that to get him canceled now, which is totally wrong, because like Planner Walk said, you can get canceled for that in 1997. But should you be canceled for it in 2023? No. Because
that's the Charles Murray thing right there.
Right. Because like Aimee
Bell Curve came out in what, like 1994,
right.
1993?
Yeah. It's what Aimee said. It's the amount of information. Every opinion grow and change because information is fluid. It's constant. We're all gathering it all the time. We are allowed to change our opinions and how we present things and what we do. So like that shouldn't go on. So this is huge conversation.
That being said, I agree that people can change their opinion. I'm all for, if someone has a bad opinion, I would want them to change that opinion. That being said, if someone has a bad opinion and that opinion gets a lot of reach, and then they go on to have okay opinions, we can take someone like Sean Head, for example, right, who has had a lot of bad opinions, which she has never apologized for, right? I think calling someone a gorilla was one of the things, and leading to a lot of harassment towards that person. She has never apologized for that. Should we then go, oh, well, that was back in the past, right? Despite the evidence to her having changed her mind or being remorseful for that is still up in the air. I don't know if she's, if someone were to point me to, she's changed her mind on that, I'll go, okay, cool, that's good. But if there is no evidence, it's like, I don't know, like the bell curve thing, if someone's published a book and that book is I'm pretty sure the bell curve is a terrible book. I saw a thing by Sean on it. If the person has not said, hey, I disavow the things in this book, or not tried to do anything to distance themselves from that, is it reasonable to assume that they still hold the positions mentioned in that book?
Well, of course he does, but it's a little more sinister than that, because the bell curve doesn't just flat out say horrible things. It takes your hand and walks you to the edge of that horrible thing, and then it just kind of leaves you there. Right? With the understanding that Charles Murray writes books about this. Richard Herrnstein is a known racist who has published articles about this. They're referencing these guys who are funded by this place called the Pioneer Fund that pretty much only funds scientific racism. So, like, nothing is explicit that he has to deny. He just has to be like, hey, man, I got money from a place and I did this research and it's honest and it's 900 pages of stats. So he's going to absolutely adhere to everything he said there. He's written books talking about the white. I'm not going to turn this into a bell curve talk. Let's have a show about the bell curve, and please invite me. I'll shut up.
Okay. But that does speak to Amy's thought on it, on cancel culture being behavioral, because like that right there, both of your examples are behaviors that we don't see a change in. And so Aimee and I would both be like, they're not for me. As far as I'm concerned, personally, they're canceled in mine. I'm not following. I'm not listening. They're no longer credible to me. There's that kind of cancellation going on, not, immediately with that kind of stuff,
But then I think that you can also get to the point where, you might have one person that's made a joke that's in bad taste, and people apply more meaning to that than, maybe someone made a racist joke. Like, let's take Dusty Smith, who had made a racist joke about when riots were happening. He basically said,
Cult of Dusty Smith?
Yes.
He still exists?
Yes, this was years back, and it's like, that joke is a racist. That is a racist joke. However, it was a joke that was a one-off thing. I have made jokes. In fact, there are some jokes that you can go back and find of mine that I recently heard, and I was like, oh, that's a bad joke, right?
Well, context matters, though, like, and timing, and when you did it and what was going on at the time,
I don't think that it would be fair to cancel me for these one-off jokes, even though they are bad. I completely disavow them. I don't think that it's fair to cancel me for these jokes, because of the simple fact is, a once-off joke is not indicative of a person's character. If it was a theme throughout a lot of jokes, then okay, maybe it's something that needs to be talked about. But I think that people should be able to make once-off jokes.
There's a protocol in place when you make a mistake that you can redeem yourself. When you have a pattern of the same mistake, it becomes much more difficult, right?
Right, because context matters. And also the post-incident behavior is sometimes the key to whether you get canceled or not. How everyone makes mistakes. I mean, we should all be grown up enough to admit that no one's perfect. Everyone sticks their foot in their mouth. There's like context going on. You may not be aware of a situation. You could make a terribly joke or statement, not knowing another thing's going on, and then that
Claire,
gets used against you.
Exactly.
You're bringing up another variable.
It is, but that's my job. I'm the variable bear.
Exactly. Before we do, I need to jump in for the super chat, please, if I can.
Okay.
I just need to grab that real quick. Okay. So for Australian $10, we have P. Barnes, who says, in most cases, it's the platform that makes the final call to cancel someone, not based on public opinion directly, but at the behest of advertisers. We have far less control than we think. Thank you so much, P. Barnes, and that's a good point.
That's dependent on the platform,
right? Because like they run to others.
YouTube. It's a matter of, YouTube's pretty loose as compared to like Truth Social or anything like that, but they kind of have that right to censor. But I think, that in itself can fuel it. because it can make a person more popular on another platform because their listeners, their viewers, whatever they are suddenly enraged and they start storming over their TikTok because they're kicked off YouTube. But ideally, you're talking about, what's happened since stuff. Ideally, you've got kind of three things. You've got, like you said, context, what happened surrounding it, and then you need to take a look at what happened before and what happened after, as in, the era of time they're in is the, which that's context, but that's also the period of time before, I suppose. But do they have a pattern of this before? And then since, have they grown? Were they young? Were they dumb? Were they indoctrinated and they've since come out of that? But the problem is that it's the same thing it was before social media with mass media, where you see this giant page one article that this person did this terrible thing. And then they got it wrong. It was out of context. When they finally, issue the correction, it's buried on page 20. It doesn't catch media attention. It's not as fascinating. You see the same thing where people rush to judgment as soon as something hits social media. And it goes in both directions, because those that support them or support the view that they think they're clinging to will clamor to them. But those that are, opposed to them are going to start flooding away from it. And by the time it's done and sorted out, I mean, any take back is useless.
I see your hand, Christopher. I see your hand.
Then I have something that I want to say after that.
Aaron, you just pulled together two things that I wanted to bring up. One is that the landscape has changed, right? The way that we handled ostracizing people in the past was different because they were driven underground in a way that, we really didn't see much of them. And I'm talking about like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Like maybe they could, do like John Birch Society conferences if their ideas were super wacky. But now there are so many bubbles, I'll call them that, which are like subcultures of ideas that nobody has to go too far after they've been cultured to find a whole bunch of people that agree with them. And that's kind of what we're exposed to. But that's part one, which is kind of a separate idea, but related to another thing that you mentioned, Aaron, that I kind of want to highlight. The audience that is watching the media now is not the same audience, because there are more content creators and short-term memory versions of social media. It's almost like the audience is waiting for gotcha moments. Did you say 3 words in a row that are insulting in a 3-hour conversation? I'm going to clip those 3 words. Why? Because then my channel gets all the clicks.
Yeah, that's
and now it is incentivized to crowdsource mistakes. Who the fuck wants to talk in that environment?
Well, I was going to just really quickly, not cut you off, but it's just mentioning on that. Is back when, this still applies to anybody that's going up for a standard political speech. Most major politicians, as they say, learn to talk in paragraphs, not sentences, because if they can get you on a short statement completely out of context, you can guarantee they're going to do it. And there's a whole continuum of how honest they are, because it could be something that is completely the opposite of what you're actually saying, or it could be something where it's just you need a little bit more to really complete the thought, but they're going to bang that out as quickly as they can. And like you're saying, who and how we're consuming it is also a large part of it, because you got more people generating more content more quickly. And when you commit a wrong, it goes out quick and hard. And then any coverage of that falls by fast. I mean, it's a quick follow-up, but you can damn well expect that if that person tries to go out again, and obviously it's in the case of major media like Tucker Carlson, he's got constant attention, but somebody who just, breaks the surface, if you break the surface again, they're going to be on you for what you did without regard for what happened at the time, without regard for what happened in between. And what's terrible is when you have it, you see in the political sphere where somebody's a fan, the left is a fan of somebody. Roseanne Barr was a good example, because had a fairly moderate viewership, but I think because, the program back in the day, they had lesbian characters. I think they had a little bit more of a liberal following, but then when she made her statements, she got canceled, and I would fairly call what happened to her cancellation. Suddenly, she's on the right, and she's their new messiah, and she's gone crazy too, which is really interesting but terrifying. But she can do that, and then you've got stuff like the silly stuff, like this whole Sneeko and Moist Critical drama. Yeah, I said the M word. Where they had a mild following, but cancellation made them more popular, and it's probably going to burn out fast because it's just the viewing how stupid they are. But the people that really suffer from it are the ones that are just an everyday. They might at most be an executive, pardon me, an executive at a company, and something blows up. Like, I can't even remember her name. I'd have to pull it up. But she was on an airplane. She made what clearly, whether she intended or not, was a racist comment. Nobody knew who she was. When she got off that plane, it exploded, and her life has never recovered. And they are the ones that suffer the most from this rush to judgment and this trial by media, because they didn't break the surface before, and now they better not do it again, or they're going to suffer for it.
I think what I want to say is I think that the big problem here is that people are quick to judge, because you see a lot of people that get cancelled. I'm going to use an example here of the Final Fantasy guy, Pro Jared, right? Pro Jared was cancelled, and there was a lot of silence from him. I can't remember why there was a lot of silence, but I think there's a reason, consulting lawyers and that kind of stuff, maybe. Or just bring together the response. And I think that people want an instant answer, right? People are very quick to go, okay, this was wrong, and we demand an immediate answer for it. Whereas it may take some time. Firstly, if you're on a plane, imagine if I'm going over to the States or something, and I'm on a plane, 10-hour trip, and I get cancelled. It's like, by the time that I'm in the States, it's been 10 hours. I haven't even had the chance to respond, and sometimes there may be issues with can you say the things that you want to say to be able to respond to a certain thing, or do you even know about the allegations? Because if you're certain people, it might be that you just don't find out for a few weeks, about certain allegations. So there's all these kinds of stuff, all these kinds of things. But people want that instant answer, because if you don't give an instant answer, that's proof of guilt. Guilty until proven innocent.
Well, and that instant answer right there is a source of a lot of problems, because it's not just in this issue. It's a broad issue, like you see it politically, where people want a politician to have a quick 1 to 3 sentence answer for how we're going to solve a problem, when it's a very complex one, and they cannot get up at a podium and explain it. They're going to have a massive research project before they can even begin to solve it. They probably don't even have a real answer until they're in office, but they will still jump up on that podium, pick a group, or just like one trend or whatever, point a finger at it and declare it the source of the evil. And it's contrary. It works very well, I think, against things, or in the case of things that are contrary to science. Because if you ask me for an answer on, I'm afraid to say the word, the evil epidemic, but they offered simple answers about why, you said don't wear masks. Then you said wear a mask. So it can't be one or the other. So you're lying in one case. Well, no, we didn't have enough masks at first, and then later on we did. I mean, it takes a little bit of explanation, a little bit of thought. These are complex policies. And it's the same thing when you come to social media is they don't care about anything surrounding it. They want the 3 words, they want the 2-minute video, and then jump to the next thing. And it doesn't serve them in the end, it doesn't serve anybody, but it feels good. I mean, it's that dopamine rush that they're chasing that makes us the stupid apes that we still are.
That being said, though, I think that there's a difference because the whole pandemic thing that was a scientific discussion, and I think that betrays a lack of scientific understanding when it comes to the general population. You'll have people that will say, "Oh, look, science used to believe this, and science didn't believe it anymore," that are religious. The same kind of thing. But I think that's more an issue of they don't understand it. When it comes to people on social media who might say something and then might backtrack, I think that's usually, it comes down to people willfully trying to misunderstand things. And I think that's a huge problem. You've got a lot of people like Vosh, right, who his things will be taken way out of context. Yes, there are things to cancel him for, but there are things that people just take out of context, try to cancel him on it, and it's just a whole thing. And it's like, this guy is on your side. Why are you fighting so hard to be against him? I don't get it.
Well, and I would say that I think they stem from a baser human issue, though, where we encounter an uncomfortable situation, or I mean, even if that situation is just our own life and we want to take it out on somebody else, where we're hunting for that dopamine rush, anything that gets in the way of that, by stopping to reason it through, whether it be something to do with scientific research, like learning about the scientific process itself, or it be a person's personal situation, what was said in the context of it. If anything gets in the way of that, it's a problem. It's an evil, and you tend to treat it as such.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that.
He's like, I deal with flat Earth. I know about this idiocy.
Here, I can sum it up for him right here.
Well, that's speaking of the reason I'm late. Well, one, I had to run out and grab dinner, but the other, I got home right on the edge, and my sister brought over her goat, and I had to help load a goat into an SUV, and I'm like, well, I have had the most redneck day I could possibly ever have.
If I had a nickel for every time I loaded a goat, I think I'd have a nickel.
I think also a point to talk about is the overuse of the term cancel culture, because it is certainly overused. Because I think an indicative point was when Christopher mentioned had to ask, okay, what are we talking about right at the beginning? Because it's something that when people talk about culture, cancel culture, and the same goes for woke. It's like a very overly broad thing that really has been overused to the point where it has no meaning.
Yeah, it's what I was talking about before, because it develops in the social media context primarily. There are other influences, but it's not developed in any somewhat official setting. They become very malleable, and then they get out there, and half the time they start as something that's semi-joking. I mean, that was definitely the case with woke, is he saw more in memes than did anything else. And then various groups and individuals will get in there, and they are trying to steer this, this liquid glass into the shape that they want before it solidifies. And these terms right now, and it's the nature of all buzzwords, especially now that things turn over faster, there's more internet influence, where things spread from one region to another. It's just they get molded in different settings to different meanings. Every group is subtly fighting control or get control of it. Just like you said, woke is a prime example, because they're debating on this in the halls of Congress. It's not being used in any sense that it was used in social media, but they're still going to slap it on official papers.
I want to say that that sounds exactly like what happened with the. I'm sure everyone is aware of the anti-SJW movement.
Mm-hmm.
How it was basically started by T.J. Kirk, and the whole idea was that it was meant to be like, ha ha, look at these silly people that are saying these silly things. But then people came along, took it really seriously, and tried to paint it as though social justice warriors were going to end Western civilization, and that's why you had to vote for Trump, people.
That's right, because we weren't. Remember.
The well, and CRT is an even better example of that, for the fact that CRT is very specifically modeled for use in primarily criminal justice courses at a college level. It got out there and it got dragged, and now you see it being used in places that have no resemblance to the original meaning. You see things tacked on it that have nothing to do with it. You're talking about things like the history of slavery, current treatment of black citizens in America and everything, when really it was just an examination of the social justice system in a very official manner, where you could actually conduct studies on this to see how this was playing out. And now it just gets slung back and forth as anything to do with race that might get taught in school. And the people that are in support of teaching about race, like true history of various races and racial diversity, don't use it at all. But the other side slings it left and right as a fear tactic and nothing more.
Exactly. Aimee, I see your hand. One moment. Yeah, Aimee?
Yes, please. I do have a question from the chat that I think will steer the conversation in an interesting direction. This is from Shayna Caldwell. She says, do you think the improvements in deepfakes will force us to reason things out before we immediately cancel people?
Good point.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead.
First, I'd like to say, if we're not able at this point to look at both sides of an issue before making a judgment, because cancel culture actually exists, because most people are too lazy to look at the other side. They just see whoever's saying the loudest, whichever one they kind of agree with, they go there, cancel culture, pile on, bully, done, over. If we're so willing to do that, now that they have the deep fakes out there, it's only going to get worse. I don't see people stopping, because they know that that cancel culture has been weaponized. People can see it, visibly see it happening. They're part of it. They see it happening.
I am genuinely worried about deepfakes, because I think that it becomes easy to, take wholesome people that have, that are squeaky clean, and then imply that they've said or done something terrible. I think that there's only one solution to this, and that is to basically, anything that you put onto the internet, keep a copy of it. And make sure that it's all uploaded. So for me on YouTube, if there is something that I have said that is, that you want to cancel me for, point me to the video on YouTube, because that's where all my content is. And I think that it's going to become tricky, especially, I think that there's things that won't catch. So, for example, me here, it's like people could go, well, this one time on the Shills, you said this, right? It's like, well, link the actual video that I was on. Or if someone tries to make it seem like I was part of a podcast that is, very, very niche and relatively unknown, it's like, okay, did I actually appear on that?
The unfortunate part of that is that they can weaponize it, put you in a position where you have to defend yourself against it, cause a whole big thing with no retribution, no accountability. What needs to happen is more accountability for it. Here in America, they have taken a lot of the ways we used to be able to fight that. We used to be able to fight misinformation better, especially those that affected ourselves personally. But they stripped that all away. They made media a social thing instead of actually reporting news and actually reporting facts and stuff. They took all those regulations away, which stripped down all of the laws and regulations that actually protected us. You have to go and jump through hoops to prove that somebody lied about you anymore. It's ridiculous.
I don't think it's necessarily the case that it's that media used to be better, because I think it's a thing where there's always been groups out there that have had certain interests. Like, take the climate change debate, for example. You'll have people that will go, okay, well, let's invite both sides to this thing. Both sides aren't equal on that subject. You know, on one hand, you've got people that are denying facts, and then on the other hand, you've got scientists that are talking about this. It's a 50-50 split in the public, but amongst the people that are expert, it's 97-3 split. And that's been going on since since the 1980s.
I'm speaking specifically here in America on FCC regulations that allow news to actually misrepresent things, to call it commentary, which is what happened. We don't really have factual news stations anymore. I don't know, Aaron, Aimee, if you could help me with this one. It's more media and commentary now. It's more opinion, and they don't have to justify anything that they say. Anyway.
Well, and you can get away with it too by using a cloak like Fox News does, where they're actually, if anything hits the court, they are actually qualified as an entertainment channel, not as news. The Tucker Carlson defined himself as a caricature in order to get out of the lawsuit. So that's prime. But yeah, I mean, and this is the thing with the democratization of any media that you're going to see, where the more people have access to it, it's great because there's no official barrier in regard that people who didn't have a voice before now have a voice. But it's also bad because it's people who shouldn't have had a voice before now have a voice. And it gets harder to sort it out. And as far as deepfakes go, I think we're going to hit a critical mass with it, where you're going to have so much out there, so many people believing, and then as a society, the less and less faith as people realize that, you know, these videos are BS, it's too easy to fake. And you'll have people who are at the outer edges of both sides, radicalized ones who will buy anything that are still going to buy into it, or the people who are just unaware of what technology can do for the long while that they might buy it. But I think we're going to see it so much becomes an issue because it's actually, this is going to end up hitting the floors of Congress about what you legally can and can't do, for the simple fact that, okay, if you're on YouTube and you're putting Arnold Schwarzenegger's face on like a sitcom, that's funny, that's harmless, that's clearly not them. But you now have adult sites that are taking faces of people, of women primarily, and putting them on other actresses and posting under that name. And not only do you have the kind of more, I won't call it debatable, but harder to get concrete evidence on issues about, you know, people's opinion of them, but you have things where it increases harassment of them. Not only the, you know, frequency, but the severity. If there's somebody who is not big, but say they're just a small Twitch person, and somebody does it and they go for another job in the future, suddenly they've got to deal with this. If not in the interview, then it crops up at work, and some jerk they're working with, they're jerks they work with, are sniggering at videos and stuff. But I think we're going to have to get a certain number of people past the gullibility barrier on that before it loses effectiveness.
Yeah, I think what Aimee brought up and Sean is, it's valid because it's actually aiding to those out there saying you can't believe anything that all government says. You can't believe anything that's true. Like the we never landed on the moon and like the world is flat. This technology out there is actually giving them another weapon to use to try to spread all kinds of damaging misinformation in general. It's just another tool that they can add for making it worse. Yeah.
And I think one of the things, this is going a bit probably a little bit off topic. I think that a lot of people don't realize that when it comes to certain things, there's moneyed interests behind what's often put on the internet, right? You look at one person, Brett Cooper, right? She's a YouTuber, right? And she's also employed by the Daily Wire. Now, if I saw her channel, I would not know that she's employed by the Daily Wire. But the Daily Wire has a lot of money behind it to push particular ideas. It's not something that's organic as it may seem. Ben Shapiro is one of the people that it's like, oh, he's just an everyman. But like he has a lot of money behind him. Like he's got billionaires behind him. And I think a lot of people don't realize that kind of stuff when it comes to a lot of information that is put out there. And I think that has a lot of sway on how discourse is presented. And it also means that, to bring it back to cancellations and stuff, it also means money. Can you really be cancelled for it if you're willing to just not listen to all the criticisms? Because you can get people to believe you regardless of whether you're being truthful or not. Look at flat earthers.
Yeah, you could just straight up Elon Musk it and say whatever the hell because you can just lose money left and right and it doesn't have an effect. But the terrible thing is, so money, when you're dealing, the nice thing about moneyed interests is that there are alternatives for you to address it. So you've got like the Dominion voting scandal where they can sue Fox News. But the problem is it's like a stone into a pond. The stone disappears, but the ripples keep going, where even if they damage Fox severely, the bad information that they put out there or the actions that they encourage in the case of cancellation culture are still spreading out there amongst the crowd and jumping from person to person because people love anecdotal evidence for something. It's comforting because it makes them feel a part of the group. That feeling a part of the group is a very luring thing, and it's one of the most terrible things because it's what you see draw people into really bad places. It's without veering too much off it. I've watched one of the Church of England ministers defending not allowing the blessing of gay marriages because it might hurt recruitment. Well, the last time I checked, Jesus wasn't hanging around for the crowd. He theoretically was out there pissing people off, and right is right, and you're not worried to stand alone. But most people are highly uncomfortable with that, and they can't stand on their own, so they'll jump into it. And if somebody argues with them, they will either acquiesce or agree in a heartbeat, and it's really sad to see, but I feel like it's just becoming more and more popular through social media. Maybe that's just me. I'm getting older. I'm turning into kind of a grumpy dick. Not that dick, different kind of dick. The dick that YouTube bans you for. But
you mean a dick?
Yeah, lower.
Me, fellow babies.
But yeah, and it seems like it's just so much. I won't say it's more. I think it's faster and easier. It's just like anything. Technology just streamlines the process so much.
Yeah, and I think that's partially why there's this whole conversation about cancel culture. It's because it used to be a thing where it's like mob mentality, but I think these days it's easy to come up with a term or a phenomenon, and it's like, and then because it's got a new word, it's like, it must be a new thing. It's like, no, it's actually something that was seen before. It's just that now we've got a new word for it. You know, you see the same thing with a lot of conspiracy theories, actually. Like the Great Replacement conspiracy theory is, you know, you can trace that back. It used to have different names, like it goes back to the Nazis, but obviously you don't want your conspiracy theory that you genuinely believe in, or maybe not genuinely believe in. It's hard to tell with some people, but you don't want to be linked with people that did an actual genocide.
Yeah, and I think too, there is an ability now for a looser following of something. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. So basically, you used to, you know, you want to get into these ideas, you join this group, and you attach yourself to all this specific credo. Well, now, you know, one person can pop up, do one bad thing, and then this group of people hate them, and they have nothing else in common, but they all hate them, so it's easier to do that. And then, too, like you said, you know, getting new terms for stuff, there's also just the reclustering of ideas where you discuss social justice. Well, it's got elements of anti-racism, feminism, everything else, and it's never... There's no solid definition, so it's just easy to abuse. That's why I'm a huge, like, obviously you can tell I'm a huge fan of the specificity of language, and if you want to talk about cancel culture with me and outside of a conversation like this, I'll tell you, go to hell and tell me exactly what you're talking about.
Well, you bring up the mob mentality thing. I mean, I think that's worth bringing up because it does touch on, and I know we might want to start wrapping this up soon, so I won't take too much time, but the tribalism that exists in us, right? Like, it's like, we're the good, they're the bad. That means that they're toxic and that they need to be removed. So they're being canceled, right? And like, we can cancel them from our little circles, but now, like I said, there are so many other little bubbles for them to go to. They're still getting an audience, right? And in today's day and age, they're getting more of a platform than they ever could have in the past if they were ostracized from, you know, the 3 broadcast stations that existed. So I think that it's even though in the description you mentioned mob mentality, that was kind of the first time it was brought up, and I have little notes here for that, but I don't want to go too deep into it, knowing that.
Well, you're absolutely right on that, because in what you're talking about, the bubbles, we've actually seen social media platforms emerge from cancellation repeatedly. The buying of Twitter by Elon Musk, there are 2 now out there, getting bigger every day. The what is it called? True Social. When Trump got canceled, that's just one platform. But he just moved his people somewhere else, and he's still talking. He never skipped a beat. Okay, you're right. You can only cancel from within yourself, because truly you can only cancel yourself, right? Now, if Trump had taken that Twitter cancellation and just said, okay, I'll be quiet and walk away,
in
that
true
would be
Trump
canceled.
fashion, he shot himself in the dick because he has an exclusivity deal with Truth Social, so that when Elon Musk invited him back to Twitter, which is an exponentially larger platform, he couldn't go.
True East Coaster there. We all know that the great businessman has not made a great business deal in the whole history of his business career, but that's an East Coast thing. I hear you, Christopher. Like
brilliant.
Yeah, but
like,
exactly.
I also think that when it comes to the cancellation of Trump off Twitter, it's like, is that a bad thing? I don't think so, because, you know, he was using the platform that he had irresponsibly. If you use something irresponsibly, like if you go out there and like okay, here's something that I do not do. I do not tell my followers to go and attack someone. I actually try to prevent that from happening, because I think that if I were to go ahead and say, okay, let's all go over to Nathan Oakley's channel and tell him that he's a poopy poo head, you know, I think that would be bad. That's inciting harassment. As a person with a platform, I have a responsibility not to do that. And if people call me out for that, people say, hey, look, you're inciting harassment here, and I just go, nah, I'm not. Or I say, you're trying to cancel me. I think that's a thing where it's like valid criticism that is often being dismissed under the guise of, oh, they're just being cancelled.
See, that's the thing too. It's like compared to some individuals on the platform, YouTube platform, some would consider me anti-free speech for the simple fact that I think that social media, especially because of the way algorithms function and feed information, has become an environment where popularity is equated to credibility. So somebody could be a complete idiot making misstatements, but because they've got followers, they'll collect more followers or think they're right because of the previous followers, and then collect more followers because of that. So I think there is a necessity sometimes to kick people off of a platform. But the thing you have to question on the other side of that is it's an intelligence and kind of transparency issue now where you're funneling them into smaller, less visible spaces where this information it's not maybe not spreading as wide, but it's greater in intensity because now you don't have the outside voices interjecting and saying, no, this is the truth of the matter. Instead, it's just all the yes men telling each other, oh, yeah, and I heard this, and I heard this, so yeah, we must be right. So even though I say, you do have to exercise some discretion on who you give the microphone to for how long, when you do that, there's that equal and opposite kickback where suddenly you don't have your eye on them. The public isn't aware of what they're doing.
Right. There's no pushback. There's no balance. Right.
Yeah. When it comes to Twitter, I think that it should be, it should be run like a benevolent cult leader.
Well, it's unfortunate because it's been running like a private PR propaganda machine right now, but like that's just my opinion. Anyway.
I think that there is a sort of a solution which YouTube has implemented for flat earthers, and that is to limit the reach. Yes, you have a right to speak, and you're getting a right to use a platform. However, you do not have the right for your voice to be heard. That is down to whoever wants to listen to you. If you grab if you're in the public square and you have a microphone and you're going around yelling at people, I think that I have the right to take that microphone off you.
Yep.
Because you're being a nuisance.
Yeah.
And also, microphones are homophobic, and I want to cancel you.
Well, there is a good point on that too. You do have a right to the freedom of speech. You do not have a right, however, against consequences, and you don't have a right to a platform. So as far as social media platforms go, you don't have a right to those because those actually are someone's property. It's like what I've said before here. If someone comes in my house and says some derogatory things about people on the spectrum, I can say, you can take your butt and pedal that elsewhere, and I can do that. I am well within my rights to do that because it is my property that you're on when you say that, when you're in my home. And that's what a lot of people do forget. But that's another part of it too. I think so.
And there is also legal recourse there. Like if someone comes onto your property, you can get a restraining order. Like is it
Absolutely.
we can take a thing that happened recently in New Zealand, the Posey Parker stuff. I don't think that it would be an infringement on her free speech to deny her entry into the country. We're basically saying, no, you're not allowed to come here. She still can speak wherever she wants, just not here in New Zealand. Eventually, she was allowed in New Zealand, and a lot of people were yelling and stuff, and they have a right to do that as well.
Right. And that's it too.
Even
she
within
chose not to speak.
Even within government, because the thing is that the far outlier here in the U.S. as far as what you are and aren't allowed to say is public property. Because I've had people when I worked security that would come in and say, hey, if they cuss their head off, they're around kids, and, watch the language, Well, I have a First Amendment. Well, that's the government, and I can tell you to get the hell out. this is private property. But even on public property, you can't do it everywhere. They put limits on it because you can do it in some places, not others. They limit what you can say where as far as applicability. And then, two, in the end, your speech is protected, but you are not protected from the consequences of your speech. So if you take and you tell somebody to run out and commit a violent act, guess what? You're probably going to get charged in that unless you use if you use vague language, it can get you past it, but you cannot just do whatever. And that's one thing. So what kills me is people like to talk about rights, but at the same time that you talk about rights, you need to talk about responsibility, because when you're not responsible for a right with how it's used, it gets taken away by necessity for the function of society.
Exactly.
And it absolutely fairly done so. So you don't have the ultimate ability to do and say whatever the hell you want without ramifications.
Well, that's it. That's what happened with Trump, right? Because it was not that we didn't want to hear what he had to say, or they were trying to silence all of his other things on his platform. That was inciting riot. It was against the terms of service of Twitter, and that's the decision that they made. That's the reason that they said, it was violence. It was inciting violence that he was doing and promoting a violent act, which most other people would have got canceled.
Well, it also comes down to like a lot of people try to paint words as a thing where words are harmless, right? Because if you say something, it's not actually going to harm someone. But like I could go onto my YouTube channel right now and start saying, okay, we need to. This is where Matt Walsh lives. We should go and protest outside his house or something like that. You know, someone that I don't like, or I could say, this is where Nathan Oakley lives. I'm going to hold a protest outside his house. Now, if people go there and something happens to Nathan Oakley or Matt Walsh or whatever, then I should be held responsible, even though it was my free speech to say things. It's like that was me that caused that to happen. It's not that my words exist in the vacuum and I was just letting people know. It's like I have some responsibility because I should have known what could have come from that. And that's why I think there should be certain limits.
Well, and then kicking back to what I talked about before with credibility, was something I was going to say and I completely forgot in the moment. Is this so? And it's always been around, but it kicks in hard certain times. Like you saw it during the Red Scare. I feel for our generation, it started, at least in the U.S., started back in 2001 after 9/11, where they begin a culture of fear to get what they want. Both parties do it. One party's worse than the other. I don't think I need to mention which, but social media is a wonderful tool for generating fear, because you can get twisted information, misinformation, just whatever, partial information, whatever you want out there. And then you get this people afraid, and you present a simple solution, because there's a lot of people that are just trying to live their lives. Getting through the daily scrape is hard enough, but then to try to add complex issues to it, it triggers an inability to cope. And I've talked about that a couple of other times. It's just I see this inability to cope with stuff. They can't handle it. They can't handle any vagueness. They don't want to dig deep on it. So the person that gives them the fastest and most comfortable answer to something is the one that they're going to buy into. And it's even easier if you like something they've already said. So just this whole urge to go with the flow, go with the crowd, is a huge problem across a ton of issues, and it just pisses me off. I mean, I spent my entire life freaking people out for the hell of it, just for the fact that I would rather be lonely than wrong, very frankly, because I'm an arrogant jerk.
Yeah. I think it's also good to have principles. I think, like, if I wanted to, I could, just say whatever I want on my YouTube channel that will get me popular. And that would probably involve being transphobic. I don't think being homophobic would be that popular, but it would be me ragging on social justice warriors, talking about how wokeism has destroyed things, all that kind of stuff. But the problem with that is that I don't believe that wokeism is an issue. I don't believe that that trans rights are a threat to civilization or women's rights or anything like that. That's not something I believe. So to do that, I'd have to betray the principles of that I am trying to good information, which is what I'm trying to do with Flat Earth. Like with Flat Earth, I'm trying to show accurate information to combat misinformation. I don't want to become the thing that I wanted to destroy.
Bingo. That's the difficulty there, not becoming the monster that you're fighting, especially with culture, with cancel culture. You want to have opinion, you want to only go so far, but there's the difficulty. Like, when do you actually become what you're fighting against? How they're doing it and what they're doing, and when does your opinion become judgment and harsh judgment, with no room for conversation? Yeah.
Stephen R. Covey, he's the one that, I believe it's R, I know it's Stephen Covey, wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and stuff. And it kind of shows you that you can come from different walks of life, different viewpoints, still be a decent person. Because some people would say that you can't be, Christian and still have character. I'm not saying that, obviously, but because I know plenty of good Christians, I know plenty of bad ones, but he was also a minister, and he talked about, I can't remember what the opposing ethic he talks about, but he talks about a character ethic versus what, since I can't remember the term, I'll say popularity ethic, because that's what it equates to, where people think if you're popular, right, the more people that agree with you, the more right you are. So they do whatever, and it could be anything from just being a complete idiot online, like some of the people whose last name's Paul, or it could be people who are more dangerous, who present misinformation that's hazardous to health and public safety, where the more people that's with them, the more correct they are. And then on the opposite side, you've got character ethic, where you examine the issue and right, you determine right by really personal introspection. Look more at yourself than you do at other people, and develop that character, because that character will stand no matter what. And this channel is right back to where we're talking about, because with cancel culture, if I do right, and I know within myself I did right, I came to that conclusion through that character I built, I don't give a damn if you cancel me. I'll deal with the consequences. They may be difficult, but I'll deal with them. Whereas other people, if you don't have that developed and you say the bad things, suddenly you're scrambling, you're dealing with PR. And it honestly, it seems like it would be a hell to me, because you're in this constant scramble to stay on top, and you can never really be who you actually are on the inside, just because you care more about what other people feel than what you feel.
Speaking of building character, I unfortunately have to get going, but this Tuesday, am going to be building my character by being a guest on Claire View's channel, and we're going to be talking about food as metaphor.
Oh, food as a metaphor. I'm really looking forward to that, Christopher.
Food as a metaphor. I can get down with that.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Who
7:30 Tuesday, 7:30 Eastern Standard. Well, Christopher, this has been great. You've been.
I gotta say. I just gotta say about that. Sounds like good food.
I'm gonna send you the video. Plan it well.
Can we talk about food as a metaphor for sex? Because I've got some good stuff about.
Well, actually, Christopher,
you can be in a side chat stirring that up, brother.
He will He always is, Christopher. I should have warned you.
Brilliant.
We've actually talked about it. It's such a big topic of food as a metaphor in language and senses and in all of our lives. It's probably going to be more than a one-shot deal. We'll see. But
And I'm going to nerd out just a little bit because my day gig is I manage a laboratory that studies the psychology of the sense of smell, and we all know. We all know that flavor has more to do with smell than it does with your taste buds. I mean, your taste buds are only responsible for like 5 things. Your nose, thousands of things. Flavor, mostly smell.
It changed my life. The vanilla chocolate ice cream experiment blew my mind when I was a kid. Just totally. You can't tell the difference without your nose between chocolate and vanilla. You can't.
I
get a cold and that'll
you can get Jelly Belly jelly beans and do the same experiment.
Except
I had lavender and honey gelato once. Really nice, by the way, but it tasted exactly how it smelled.
Yeah,
as it should.
And it didn't taste bad.
It tasted nice, didn't
it? Probably only had the taste component of like sweet with the mouthfeel of creamy. But
yeah, I've had that.
Flavor is what it smelled like, right? It tasted like sweet, but the flavor was mostly what it smelled like.
Right. Before you leave, Christopher, do you have anything else you want to say about cancel culture for us?
Cancel culture. Listen, I think this could be talked about on multiple different hangs, and I think that this particular one demonstrated how broad of a topic it is. And it's almost like we would need to say, okay, within this medium, you know what I mean? As a cancel culture as it applies to this specific medium and having a specific discussion about that, and then a separate discussion about it applied to a different medium. Like, how does cancel culture apply to talks on campuses? That only being the topic, and then applying to Twitter, only applying to that. Not saying that you have to, but I mean, it's such a rich topic. It was impossible to kind of wrangle together all the great ideas that that Aaron and how do you pronounce your name? Planner Walk.
Yeah, Planner Walk.
Planner Walk, yeah. Planner Walk and Aaron had some great ideas. Of course, Aimee, Claire did. Dick kept his mouth shut for some reason. Not quite sure what was that.
He just knows that I'm ready to cancel him at any moment.
I think that,
he warned you ahead of time.
Dick would get himself canceled every 5 seconds. If
I live on the edge, guys, on the edge.
There are people behind the scenes controlling.
But Aimee, I would say, based on what Christopher just said, that we've done what we try to do with this show, and that is to get the conversation started and continued, like everywhere. So that was like one of the things. You get a topic, you start showing all the sides of it, and you want people to continue to talk about it, look at it, and keep going with it. So I hope you do, Christopher, on your channel. I hope you do Planner Walk on yours. Aaron, everywhere you go, I hope you do too. I know Aimee and I will keep talking about it because you can't shut the two of us up.
No.
you just can't.
No, once we get going, look out. Here we come. Oh, Lord, they're coming. So, yeah. So this was a great show tonight, and I do want to thank everyone for coming. It's been amazing, and I think it's, it is a very broad topic, and I probably should have narrowed it down when I was helping plan, but it was just something to start out with, and we did start a conversation. We sparked a conversation. We had some articles to look at tonight. We never got to them, but
I was about to say about that.
No, we did prove the one thing that we wanted to, that there's actually some benefit to cancel culture, that there is a societal benefit, and like Christopher came right out of the box with that, which I was really happy because that was the first article we put up, the pros and cons, and I think Planner Walk also helped balance that, and Aaron too. They're showing how it can be used for good, even though mostly it's used for evil. Let's be honest.
Exactly. You can't say anything that doesn't if you don't say something that toes the line, then you could be canceled immediately. And even if it's just something mild, and that to me is just far too much. And I see too much of that too.
I think the main problem with it, just to try and wrap up my thoughts on it, is that it's usually used on people that have fairly agreeable opinions, right? So if someone, it's not necessarily that they've said something that's outright evil. Like if we take the issue of trans rights or even LGBT rights in general, or queer rights is actually, I can use an example for that. So you've got people that are outright wanting to just ban being transgender, ban being homosexual and that kind of stuff. Yet someone might get cancelled for saying the F slur because in a context that they're not trying to be homophobic or anything, because that's a bad word and you can't say that, even though they're all for trans rights and gay rights and all that kind of stuff. And they're just making a joke or an edgy joke, but they get cancelled even though they're not the problem.
Right. And that is an issue. You know, it does get abused. It's like anything else. There are going to be some of those few bad apples that do abuse it, and they're the loudest voices. So that's an issue too.
I composed a theme song for cancel culture in the background. Check this out.
Wait, that's a theme. That's a theme bar. That's a theme bar, not a song. Let's be clear for all the music aficionados. Aimee and I are not like supporting that statement. Like, let's not cancel him. Let's just help. Okay. Okay.
You need a bit more.
I know. Just a little bit more would be like song worthy. It sounded like a submarine to me. Like,
yeah.
A little Star Trek there.
Trek things,
like dive alert. We're going down. Like bat in the hatches. Like, is that how we're leaving the show? Like, it's emerged.
I usually give notice we're going down by telling them to grab the headboard, but that's just me.
Aaron, I can always count on you for that, but don't get us started. No.
Exactly. So I do want to thank everyone in the chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you in the chat. You had a great conversation going in there too, and there were great comments that came up and everything like that. So I'm glad that you all are continuing the conversation as well. And so I do want to thank you for that too. Thank you for coming. And I do want to thank the panel for coming. This was awesome. This was a wonderful conversation, and we really we did get that conversation started, even without our articles. That's so funny. It was good though. That's a good show. You know, it goes in whatever direction. I think that was fun. So I want to thank every one of you for coming too as well. Thank you so much. It was great fun. So thank you, everybody. And I want to wish all of you a good night, please. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Could it be?
It's over. Go home. Go.